guys, thanks for stopping by. Welcome to ASMR. ASMR showcases spine-chilling stories from Reddit. All will be narrated in a soothing ASMR whisper. So let's find a quiet spot, relax, and dive into the world of whispers and chills with these scary stories from Reddit. I'm not sure where else to post this, but it's been on my mind a lot lately. I told this story once in real life to someone I was dating at the time, and they didn't believe me, laughed actually. I haven't told anyone since. I think what happened to me was supernatural, but not in a dramatic movie way. It was quieter, more subtle, and that's what makes it worse. It felt real, like I'd brushed up against something I wasn't supposed to. This happened in 2017 when I was in my mid-20s. I had just moved to Philadelphia for work, first time living on my own. I rented the top floor of a brownstone that had been divided into small apartments. Mine was one bedroom unit, pretty bare bones, slanted ceilings, uneven floors, tiny kitchen, nothing fancy, but I liked it. There was one weird thing though. From the very beginning, there was a door in the hallway that didn't make sense. Let me explain. When you came up the stairs to my unit, you reached a small landing with my front door on the right. Across from it on the left was another door, same style, same handle, no number. My lease didn't mention another unit. I asked the landlord about it when I moved in, and he waved it off, said it used to be part of the top floor before they renovated, and it was now sealed off. Storage, he told me. Nothing you need to worry about. Okay, cool, whatever. But I started noticing little things. Every few nights, I'd hear movement from that side of the hall, like something brushing against the inside of the door. Not loud, just soft, irregular sounds. A scrape, a thump, once what sounded like a slow knock. I told myself it was pipes, or raccoons in the wall, something boring. Then, one night, I came home late. I was halfway up the stairs when I noticed the hallway light was off, which was weird. It was usually on a motion sensor. As I reached the landing, my phone flashlight hit the door across from mine and I froze. The door was open, just a crack. I didn't go near it. I unlocked my place, shut the door behind me, and stayed up the entire night listening, but I never heard anything. In the morning, it was closed again. I convinced myself I'd imagined it, or that someone, maybe maintenance, had been in there. A couple weeks later, I was cleaning and accidentally knocked over a can of soda that rolled into the hallway. I opened my front door and the door was open again, this time wider, enough to see inside. It wasn't a storage space, it was a room. Dusty, yes, but not abandoned. There was a small desk, a wooden chair, a faded green rug. The walls were painted a dull yellow, and there were framed photos on them, black and white, like from the 50s. A woman in a long coat, a child standing near a pond, a man holding a fishing rod. It didn't look creepy, it looked lived in. But the strangest part, I couldn't see a window, no light source, just this faint, dim yellow glow, like the air itself was tinted. I stepped closer, just one step, and something shifted. The air changed, my ears started to ring, like the pressure dropped, and then, from inside the room, I heard a voice, not loud, not clear, but right near the doorway, just one word. Wait. I shut my door and locked it. That night I had this dream. I was standing in the hallway again, staring at that door. But it wasn't a door anymore. It was a long, narrow hallway, lined with the same yellow walls and photographs. And at the very end of the hall, just barely visible in the dark, was a man, standing perfectly still, watching me. I woke up gasping. I decided I had to ask the landlord again, told him I'd seen the room, that the door was open. He got real quiet, then said something like, possible. It was sealed during construction, drywall, insulation, everything. I told him it was open, that there was furniture inside, photos. He looked at me and said, "That space doesn't go anywhere. It's 5 feet deep. We walled it off years ago. There's nothing behind that door." I asked if I could look, just to prove I wasn't imagining it. He sighed, came up with a flashlight, and unlocked the outer latch with a key I'd never seen before. The door creaked open, and behind it, he was right. There was just a short wall, nothing. Just 5 feet of dusty drywall and cobwebs. No room, no desk, no photos. Just emptiness. He looked at me like I was crazy, told me not to mess with the door again, said he was going to screw it shut just to be safe. I moved out 2 months later. I didn't tell anyone else about what I saw. I even convinced myself I'd imagined it. Stress, lack of sleep, a waking dream. Until about a year later, when I was scrolling a local history thread out of boredom. Someone had posted a series of photos from old Philadelphia neighborhoods in the 1950s. One of them stopped me cold. It was a black and white photo. A woman in a long coat, standing beside a child near a pond. I swear to you, it was the exact same photo I saw hanging in that room. Same pose, same expression, same pond in the background. I still don't know what I walked into, whether that room ever really existed, or if something else was showing it to me. But sometimes when I walk down old streets at night, I catch myself looking at the buildings a little bit too close, because part of me thinks that room might still be there, just waiting for the door to be opened again. I used to deliver for a furniture company in the north of England, mostly small towns and country roads. One job in particular still gets under my skin. I don't know if it counts as paranormal exactly, but something about it changed the way I see things. We had a regular route out past the Ashford area, mostly cottages and older homes. A lot of the roads aren't lit at night, and you can drive for miles without seeing another car. It was October, cold and wet, the kind of chill that gets into your clothes and stays there. We had a last-minute delivery added to my run late in the day, a single armchair to a farmhouse a few miles past Ashford Lane. I didn't mind, it was quiet out there, and I liked the drive. It was already dark when I set out. The lane was narrow, just one of those single-track roads lined with hedges and trees on both sides. The GPS showed only one left turn before the farm. As I got closer to the turn-off, I saw someone ahead on the side of the road. A woman. She was just standing there, very still, unnaturally still, just at the edge of the grass where the road curved. Pale coat, no umbrella, hair soaking wet and plastered against her face. I slowed down out of instinct and rolled the window down just a bit as I passed. She didn't even flinch. She was turned slightly toward the hedge, maybe just a foot away from it, arms straight by her sides, just standing there in the rain like she'd been there for hours. There was no car nearby, no houses for at least half a mile in either direction. I thought about stopping, but something told me not to. Not fear exactly, just this sharp sense that I shouldn't interfere. I kept driving. The farmhouse was about 10 minutes from there. I pulled up, dropped off the chair, and chatted briefly with the man who lived there. I mentioned the woman on the road, asked if he knew of anyone who might have broken down nearby. He didn't even blink. "She's still there?" he asked. That phrasing caught me off guard. I said yeah, just before the turn-off to Ashford Lane. He nodded once again and said, "She's been out there a long time." That was it. No further explanation. Just turned back into his house and shut the door. I got back in the van, uneasy, but not ready to admit to myself that anything was wrong. On the drive back, she wasn't there. No one was on the side of the road. No footprints, no sign anyone had been standing there. just the dark, slick road and the low hiss of rain. I told myself she must have left when I was at the farmhouse, maybe got picked up. But over the next few months, I passed that spot dozens of times, sometimes at night, sometimes early in the morning, and more than once I saw her again. Always the same spot, always standing at the hedge. Sometimes I caught only a glimpse of her through the trees, but she never waved, never moved, just stayed there. I stopped mentioning it. The other drivers laughed it off or said it was probably someone local, maybe a little unwell, that kind of thing. But then the dream started. Not nightmares exactly, just a single image, a narrow lane, headlights catching on something pale ahead, and this horrible, vague sensation that I was forgetting something important, like waking up from a conversation you're sure never actually happened. The last time I saw her was just after New Year's. I was coming back late from a cancelled drop, driving the lane like always. She wasn't at the hedge this time. She was standing in the middle of the road, facing away from me. I hit the brakes and skidded to a stop, heart hammering. It took me a second to realise the van had gone completely silent. No engine noise, no rain, just the quiet hum of panic in my ears. I looked again, and she was gone. No sound, no sign anyone had been there. I stepped out of the van with a torch, scanned the trees, but nothing. I swear, I mean this absolutely. I wasn't alone. I don't take that route anymore. Switched to warehouse work for a few months. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I picture that road again, and the way she stood there without even reacting. Not lost, not confused, just waiting. And every time I think about it, I wonder, was I the only one who was meant to stop? Or was I the one who was supposed to keep driving? This happened 2 years ago, and I still don't like talking about it. I've told a few people, but it always ends with them saying something like, oh, it was probably just an animal, or you imagined it, and maybe they're right, but it didn't feel that way. My friend Ben and I had gone on a weekend camping trip in Wales, up near Snowdonia. He knew this area from his childhood. His uncle had taken him hiking out there, and he swore he could remember a spot that was quiet, flat, near a stream, and tucked far enough off the beaten path that we wouldn't hear anyone for miles. We parked the car, hiked for a few hours, and eventually found a clearing that matched his memory almost exactly. It felt remote, dense trees all around us, no signal, nothing man-made in sight, just us, the tent, and the woods. That first day was completely normal. We set up camp, made a fire, cooked, and stayed up talking, nothing weird. But that night, after we turned in, I woke up to a sound. It was subtle, just soft crunching, like leaves being stepped on slowly. I held my breath. It wasn't near the tent, not at first, just somewhere out in the trees. I figured it was a deer, maybe a badger. I didn't want to wake Ben over nothing, so I closed my eyes and waited for it to pass. But it didn't. The sound circled us, not quickly, not aggressively, just this slow, deliberate movement, walking a wide ring around the tent. At one point, it paused, then took 2 steps, then stopped again. I finally whispered Ben's name. He didn't answer, but I heard his breathing change. He was awake too. Neither of us said anything after that. We just lay there completely still, while this thing kept pacing outside. At some point, it stopped. I don't know how long we stayed awake, but eventually drifted off. In the morning, we tried to laugh it off, Fox, Ben said, or some hiker messing with us. But neither of us really believed that. The next night was even worse. We turned in early. I was nervous, but figured maybe whatever it was had moved on. But just after it got fully dark, the sounds started again. This time, it didn't circle. It walked directly up to the tent. I heard twigs snapping, Leaves crunching, slow, measured steps, not animal-like, too steady, too heavy. Then silence, no breathing, no rustling, just nothing. I could feel Ben frozen next to me. I wanted to call out, but something told me not to. Something about how quiet it was wrong. Then we both heard it, something brushing lightly along the outside of the tent, like fingerprints dragging across the fabric. It made a full pass, moving around us, slow enough that you could feel the shape of it, whatever it was, following the curve of the nylon. Then it stopped, directly behind my head. I don't know if you've ever been that scared. So scared, your body feels separate from your brain. I remember my ears ringing, my tongue felt numb. I couldn't even tell if I was breathing. And then, suddenly, the pressure changed. Not the air, the atmosphere. Like the whole forest around us held its breath. No wind, no bugs, just dead silence. That's when we heard it, right up against the tent. A whisper, not words, not even a voice exactly, just a soft, breathy sound, like someone trying to speak but not knowing how. That was it for me. I started crying. Ben reached for the torch, but it wouldn't switch on. Swore later the batteries were new. We just lay there, too afraid to move, while whatever it was stayed behind us. Then, just as suddenly as it came, it was gone. No footsteps, no retreat, nothing. Just the sound of normal forest life slowly returning, like whatever had been there had taken the silence with it. We backed up first light, didn't even eat, just grabbed our stuff and hiked out. Barely spoke until we hit the car. I asked Ben later if he remembered the whisper. He said, "I don't think it was outside." I don't know what that means, and I didn't want to press. All I know is we don't camp anymore. Not deep in the woods, not anywhere we can't see a house or a road. Because whatever that was, it wasn't human. And I don't think it wanted to scare us. I think it wanted to learn us. I don't really talk about this, mostly because saying it out loud makes it sound more ridiculous than it felt at the time. But it's never stopped bothering me. It was the kind of thing that crept up slowly, not terrifying, just off. And by the time I realised something was seriously wrong, I'd already been living with it for weeks. This happened a few years ago, when I was renting a small flat in an older building in Bristol. It was one of those converted terraced houses. My unit was on the ground floor, and there was one flat above me. I never met the person who lived upstairs, never saw them come in or out, but I heard them. That's what makes it worse. I definitely heard them. There were the usual sounds at first, footsteps overhead, doors opening and closing, the occasional dragging noise like furniture being shifted, pretty standard stuff, nothing alarming. But I noticed the patterns were strange. The footsteps always seemed to follow the same route, across the living room, pause, then toward the back, always at the same pace, never hurried, never running water, never a TV or music, just slow, steady pacing, like someone walking a route they'd walked 1,000 times. I mentioned it to the letting agent once, casually, and she said, as far as she knew, the flat above was empty. Had been for months. She said the owner had been trying to sell it. I laughed it off, said I must have been hearing the neighbours next door through the walls. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true. I could hear the difference. The footsteps were directly above me. They continued every night, always that same slow path. I stopped going into my living room at night. I'd sit in my bed, reading with headphones in, trying to drown it out. But it got worse, louder. Sometimes I'd hear what sounded like breathing, not heavy, just present. I started leaving lights on, every room. I didn't even care about the bill. Then, one night, was in the kitchen, standing by the window, when something shifted above me. It felt like a weight pressing through the ceiling. I could actually see the plaster flecks just slightly, like someone was leaning down onto it from above. That's when I finally went outside and stared up at the windows of the flat above mine. All of them were dark. The curtains hadn't moved, nothing changed. But I stood there in the cold for a long time, because something occurred to me that I hadn't realised until that moment. The footsteps, the pacing, it always stopped right above the window where I sat in the living room, every single time. And I remembered all the times I'd sat there, staring at my phone, watching videos, thinking I was alone in the building. I wasn't. I called the letting agent again, asked her to check if someone had broken in upstairs. She said the door was sealed, the lock's intact. She even sent someone to inspect it. They said the flat was completely empty, dust everywhere, no signs of life, nothing disturbed. The pacing stopped after that, but I never got comfortable again. I moved out a few months later. Every now and then, though, I catch myself wondering about that flat, wondering if the next tenant ever heard it too. And more than that, I wonder how long it had been happening before I noticed. How many nights I sat in that living room with something standing perfectly still, just above me. I don't usually post on here, but I've been reading for years and I figured maybe writing this down would help me stop thinking about it. This happened to me and my friend Dean 2 years ago in North Wales, near the Berwyn Mountains. We'd been hiking out that way for a few days, nothing too intense, just a long weekend off-grid. Tent, 2 packs, cooking gear. The area isn't super touristy, so once you're deep in, you can go hours without seeing another person. The second night, we set up camp in a clearing about an hour off any marked trail. It was quiet, really quiet. Not eerie at first, just that thick silence you get when there's no one around for miles. The kind of quiet where every sound feels close, even when it's far off. At around midnight, we were finishing the last of the whiskey when we heard movement in the trees. Not wind, not a fox or something small, heavier, rhythmic. Dean turned off his headlamp and we sat still. I figured it was a deer. There are loads in that area, but it got closer, slower, like someone taking careful steps. Then it stopped just outside the firelight. I called out, nothing threatening, just a hello, in case someone else had wandered up lost. No answer. The sound didn't retreat either, it just paused, like it was listening. After about 30 seconds, it moved again, faster this time, but circling us, staying just beyond the tree line. I got up and aimed my torch towards the sound, but the beam just caught branches and missed. That's when I noticed how quiet it had gotten. Not just us, everything. No birds, no wind, no underbrush movement, just nothing. Dean whispered, "Let's get inside." We zipped up the tent and kept our boots on. I didn't sleep much. I kept hearing little shifts in the leaves outside, but they never got close again. Eventually, I drifted off. The next morning, we broke camp early. Dean didn't say much, but he seemed on edge. He's not the jumpy type either, ex-military, calm, rational, but he kept glancing back towards the woods as we packed. Around midday, we reached a gravel road that cut through parts of the reserve. I remember feeling relieved, thinking we were back in familiar terrain. That's when Dean stopped walking. I looked up ahead and saw what he saw. Someone was standing at the tree line, maybe 30 or 40 feet off the road. It was a man, sort of, tall, thin, clothes hanging strangely loose, like they didn't fit right. His posture was off, like he wasn't balanced correctly on his feet. But the worst part was his face. It was in shadow, but it looked wrong, stretched somehow, like the features were there, but not in the right places, not completely. I raised my arm to wave out of habit, but grabbed it. "Don't," he said, low, flat. We started walking again, kept our heads forward, but I could feel it still watching us. My scalp actually tingled, like when you know someone's staring. We didn't stop until we were back in the car. I tried to laugh it off, said maybe it was a local or someone camping illegally. But Dean shook his head and said, "I saw something like that once in Afghanistan. Not a person, not really." We didn't talk about it again. Here's one thing though. A week after we got back, I started hearing footsteps outside my flat. I live in a semi-detached house with a narrow side path between me and next door. I'd hear them between 2 and 4 in the morning, slow, deliberate, one pass, sometimes 2. I never looked out, I didn't want to. It stopped after about 5 nights. Then, last week, Dean messaged me, said his dog had started growling at the back door in the middle of the night. Nothing was there, but the grass in the yard was pressed down, like something had walked across it. He asked if I remembered that thing in the woods, and I said I'd forgotten. He replied, "I don't think it stayed behind." I used to live in a house share. It had that kind of layout where everything creaked and the walls didn't quite line up. There were 5 of us renting rooms, all students or postgrads at the time. I had a room on the 2nd floor. The basement was technically part of the house, but no one lived down there. It was strange. Low ceilings, cold brick walls, a single overhead bulb. There was a door that led out to the garden, but we all kept it bolted from the inside. The landlord stored old furniture down there, wardrobes, chairs, broken appliances. It was cluttered and smelled permanently damp. At first, we never thought much about it. Then Jess, one of the housemates, said she kept hearing noises from down there. Not plumbing or the boiler. Knocking. Steady. Deliberate. Always at night. She went down to check one evening, came back up almost immediately and told me it felt wrong. Like the air was heavier the second she crossed into the room. She laughed it off, but she didn't go back down again. Soon enough, we all started hearing it. Always the same pattern. 3 knocks, then silence, then again hours later. Never at the same time though, never frantic, just there. Someone scrawled, the tenant downstairs, on the basement door one night after too many drinks, trying to be funny. But it stopped being a joke after a while. One evening, I came home late from work. As I passed the top of the stairs, I noticed the basement door wasn't latched. It was open, maybe 2 or 3 inches. I shut it and made sure the bolt slid in properly. That night, I woke up at some point before dawn. I didn't hear knocking, but I felt something was wrong. I lay still and realised the hallway outside my room was too quiet. No creaking floorboards, no pipes, just a kind of waiting silence. Then I heard movement, something soft, not footsteps exactly, but the sound of weight shifting, like someone pacing slowly but deliberately just outside my door. When I finally opened it, the hallway was empty. Everyone else said they hadn't left their rooms. After that, more strange things happened. The basement light would flicker even when the switch was off. One of us would find the door slightly open in the morning. The landlord brushed it off when we told him, said the old hinges were loose. Then Jess moved out quickly. She wouldn't say why, but she looked shaken. She'd always been the most laid back of all of us, but she wouldn't even stay for a full cup of tea on her last visit. All she said was, "It's not just the noise anymore." After she left, someone took it upon themselves to nail the basement door shut. No discussion, just done. The rest of us were secretly relieved. I finally moved out a few months later. Here's what really got to me though. The week before I left, I was doing laundry in the hallway and needed a pair of socks I dropped near the stairs. When I went down to grab them, I glanced toward the basement door. Even nailed shut, I swear I saw something move in the gap beneath it. just a faint flicker of motion, like someone standing too close to the other side, shifting slightly. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't a draft. The basement had no windows, no airflow. I didn't check again. I finished packing that weekend and left. A year later, I ran into one of the housemates who stayed on. He told me they finally cleared out the basement completely. They had to hire a skip to get rid of all the old junk. Behind one of the big wardrobes, they found a door they hadn't known was there, sealed up under layers of plaster and nailboard. It led into a narrow room, no lights, stone walls, a single old chair chained to the floor. The landlord claimed he had no idea it existed. They bricked it up the next day, but a couple of weeks ago, the guy I spoke to texted me out of nowhere, and all it said was, "The knocking's back." Well, that concludes today's Scary Reddit stories. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this creepy journey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please also leave your own spooky experiences below in the comments. Who knows, I could add it to the next video.